Well, this weekend, Leicester launched its 21st Comedy Festival in a city famous for being the most multicultural in Britain. It must often be tricky for comedians to raise a laugh without offending somebody in a Leicester audience. As we all know too well, it can be a difficult line to tread. Well, are some topics too sacred for comedy? Kola-san. Hi, Kola, again. When someone makes a joke about God or a cartoon or whatever, or a joke about God, clearly it's not offending God. Clearly, God is bigger than that. Surely it's only offending the people who want to be offended. Otherwise, don't look at it.
I don't think it's that we want to be offended. We worship that God, or respect that prophet, or love that person or that book or whatever. And we feel hurt because we have a deep affection for whoever we're talking about, whether it's God, whether it's a prophet, whatever. We have love and affection for them the way we have love and affection for our parents, for example, our children. I would not be able to tolerate.
But your children and your parents exist, and
well,
God,
so does God,
lots of people don't believe God exists. So for lots of people, the jury's out. For lots of people, the jury's in. For lots of people, there is no jury.
Yes.
But your family exists.
Yes. Well, number one, for us, God and the prophets are real. So it's not as if this is just something ethereal. But the other thing is that... I understand that,
but for other people, they aren't.
Yes, but we cannot go through life saying what we like and doing what we like. We have to show respect and courtesy to the people around us. That's the whole point. That's what makes us human beings, that we know how to survive around people, and that our job is not to say what we like, regardless of the other person, as long as I've made my money, you know, for my next joke routine. And so, I mean, I'll tell you, you know, Citizen Khan on the BBC, absolutely love him to bits. What, the programme? The
Life of Brian. Jesus was a prophet, of course. Life of Brian.
I did not find that funny. I actually found that quite offensive.
But it wasn't about Jesus, it was about Brian.
Yes, but I think that a lot of the jokes there, weren't.
Project Reader Index on censorship. Shouldn't we be more careful not to offend people of sincere faith like Kola gratuitously?
The American journalist H.L. Mencken once said that one should respect the other man's religion in the same way one respects his belief that his wife is beautiful and his children are intelligent. And Cola's absolutely right that, you know, in everyday life, we don't go around just saying what we like to anybody and, you know, just abusing people. But the point of comedy is that exactly that transgression, to escape from the little constraints that we put on ourselves every day. We laugh exactly because, with most comedians, we think, there's something that said that maybe I thought, maybe once, and it occurred to me, and I didn't say it. And laughter is a release in a lot of ways. I mean, going back to the earlier debate, I mean, I can remember, and I'm sure Colin can remember, so, you know, in the 80s and 90s, in Ireland, there were lots of little jokes around sexual abuse, and in some ways, around clerical abuse. In some ways, it was a way of dealing with the fact that no one else was dealing with it. We knew there was something going on, and we thought, well, at least we can laugh at these people, if nothing else. It's a great way of dealing with the fact that there are huge hierarchies, these power structures around.
Pricking pomposity.
Exactly.
Yeah, Jeff Mirza.
And that's the whole point, really, of comedy, is not to offend, but to make people think a little bit. And if you can use comedy, you know, for example, I mean, I do gags about Muslims.
You are a Muslim, yeah.
I'm Muslim, I do gags about Muslims, I do gags about other religions as well. I went to see a Buddhist pantomime the other day, someone shouted out, "He's beyond you!" So, I mean, now who's offended by that? We talk about the Muslim community, for example. Right now, in this country, Muslims are doing really bad things involved in drugs, crime, prostitution, even grooming. And then some people say we're not integrating.
What about Pakistan, where there is a blasphemy law, for example? Yeah. Are we in danger of having one, you know, through the back door here?
I've just come back from Pakistan 3 weeks ago, and it's a very beautiful place with very beautiful people, and there are some very liberal people, but unfortunately, on the subject of blasphemy, or what they think is blasphemy, you know, you should be killed. You can be sitting with normal people having a proper conversation, and then, you know, someone says, oh, someone offended the Prophet or whatever, and they'll be like, oh, he should be killed. And so that is a place not to go to for stand-up comedy. Because it's going to take a long time for them to understand that stand-up comedy is a device, or, you know, comedy is a device for, you know, discussing subjects, satire.
Is there a danger we get that attitude here if we are, you know, too sensitive to people's sensibilities, Kola? speak to Paul in a minute. Isn't there a danger we get that more and more? People overreacting?
Definitely, we do. Definitely, and Muslims love to overreact anyway. I think it's the hot spices we eat. I don't know, but we do it on a regular basis. But I think that, you know, we have to be very careful, and religious people themselves have to try not to take offence all the time as well. But, you know, when I see a comedian making fun of his mother-in-law, which tends to be the stock trade of comedians, I know he's not making fun of his mother-in-law. He's just making fun of the concept of the mother-in-law. And she's not going to beat him with, you know, as soon as he walks through the door. But when God and the prophet and religious, you know, deities or whatever come into the picture, people take them personally because they have a personal contact with them. And we have to be careful simply about that.
Paul, you're a writer for some marvellous programmes, Miranda and Not Going Out, also a Christian. Let's get back to the life of Brian. Was there anything in there that you found difficult, you found offensive?
Well, I grew up watching it and loving it and finding it hysterical. It's only more recently when I've revisited it and I've got to the crucifixion scene and thought, oh, it's a little bit tricky, this, as a Christian. I find the nearer to the cross I get personally, the more problematic I find it to find humour. So when I've been writing a book recently, retelling some Bible stories, I've kind of focused on the early parts, Adam and Eve, Noah, that's kind of safe, you know, tropes that we all know. For me personally, the nearer you get to the cross as a Christian, and they're thinking, well, it's like someone making jokes about your mum who's died in a car crash or something. For Christians, that's how personal it is. I'm well aware, as a performer, as a comedian, I defend the right to do whatever jokes you personally think you should do. Play the room, as I see it. And whether you're a comedian or a joke teller in your own living room, play the room. And I like to try and make the most amount of people have a good time as possible, which means not targeting different people, not splitting the room. Other comedians like to go out there and actually do that, and that's exactly their prerogative. But I think people should vote with their feet. If they don't like that, then maybe go and see someone else.
Is there not a difference between targeting a race which is unacceptable and targeting a belief system which is a matter of opinion?
Yeah, I think you can talk about religion on stage perfectly well. Yeah. That's absolutely fine. And you can't account for offence, really, as a comedian. We don't know. There could be you could do Why Did the Chicken Cross the Road? And there's a farmer in the front row whose chicken's just been run over, and he's not going to like that very much. And we can't tell what people will and won't be offended
What about the
by.
Book of Mormon? Here's another one. Would you make fun of Scientologists?
I think I probably have at some point in the past, but I don't keep track. But I
so
think
you've got to pick your religion.
Well, no, I think you've got to play the room. You've got to work out, would they, with the spirit of a sense of humour, laugh along with it? And I think
probably
if they would,
not.
Well, I think some of them might, depending on the approach you take. I think there are ways of talking about these things that are fun and funny, and talking about them without mocking them.
Yeah. David Jennings.
Yeah, I don't think religious faith needs a great deal of protection, actually, because if it's sincerely held, people will hold it, whatever anybody else may say about it. So I don't think it needs that kind of protection. But I think there is a difference between being able to make a joke about religious faith and setting out to be gratuitously offensive. And I think there is a difference and a distinction.
Can you give an example of in comedy where somebody has been gratuitously offensive?
Well, I can't think of anything just off the top of my head, but if you actually wanted really just to say something obnoxious about Jesus or obnoxious about the prophet, just because you wanted to say something obnoxious, so you create something around that because you want to be obnoxious, then I think that would be gratuitously offensive.
Well, then don't read it, don't watch it.
Comedy can actually give you an insight into religion that can be quite helpful, actually, because it actually puts it into a different context, different perspective. And that can be quite positive. But I don't think it needs all that protection. We also need to remember, Nicky, that any comedy, I mean, you talked about the chicken getting run over, but any comedy runs the risk of offending somebody. But it all depends what the intention is of the person that's actually making the joke.
Yeah. OK, Jeff, in just a second. Let's get some audience reactions. So, a lady back there. Good morning. There it comes. There's the microphone. From above.
Just like to say, I mean, the thing you have to remember about comedy and humour is that the reason generally something tends to be funny is because there tends to be some truth behind it, as minimal as that might be. So perhaps it's quite interesting that when comedians do poke fun at religion, there is maybe something for us to think about that. You know, the people who are being offended should perhaps maybe think about what's being joked about as a serious issue.
You're far too young to remember Dave Allen. No. Have you heard of Dave Allen?
No.
Check out on YouTube. If you're not watching Charlie's Hunting Channel, watch Dave Allen on YouTube. Because he used to make fun out of religion all the time. Who else? Over there, gentleman there. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning. Yes, it's funny. I was just going to mention Dave Allen. He poked fun at religion all the time.
Mainly Catholicism.
Mainly Catholicism, but let's just call it religion. he just saw the absurdity in religion, basically. I mean, let's face it, we're asked to believe in a talking snake. We're asked to believe that there was a directive to kill witches. We're asked to believe that, that a prophet could hold back the night. We're asked to believe that another prophet flew from Mecca to Jerusalem on a winged horse in the blink of an eye. We're asked to believe...
So you have the right to say that's baloney?
I think so. Can I just
Nobody asked me to believe that.
We are told that the saints' tombs opened up and the occupants had a stroll around town.
But you don't have to believe it. You can choose not to believe it, unless you do believe all these things.
Yeah, and finally, in fact, we also asked to believe that, according to the great Thomas Paine, that a young woman was debauched by a ghost. I mean, the whole thing is so absurd that it leaves itself open to...
OK, a gentleman over there, yes, let's get your view on this. Good morning.
I think if we look at comedy, I think there are some messages that comedy can bring out that maybe are difficult to touch upon in other ways. But I think it's really important to recognise that for many people, their faith forms a big part of their identity, and therefore to mock what they believe. I mean, for me, my Sikh faith inspires me to do good, to be respectful of all people. And
would you not, if you didn't have a Sikh faith, would you not?
No, I'm not
do good?
I'm not saying that, but for me personally, my faith inspires that in me. And then if someone wants to mock that, I would find that quite difficult. But that said, people can have different comedic tastes, and that's perfectly fine.
Caroline, you're quite relaxed about a bit of lampoonery.
And I wanted to pick up on something briefly that Porrig said, that when people giggled about the abuse crisis in Ireland and said father's a bit fiddly, actually that's how it got covered up, because it was seen as funny, and it clearly wasn't funny. But I think generally, when we say are some topics too sacred, who decides what's sacred? Who decides? Yeah. And therefore, as a Christian, I believe that my faith is historically accurate. I believe that everything that Christianity and Catholicism teaches is true and can be proven. And therefore, because of that, it should be subject to test.
What about the Monty Python song? Caroline, what did you think about the Monty Python song? Every is sacred. It's Sunday morning.
I think it's an absolute scream.
It's sacred. Every
a friend of mine sang the solo on that particular film years and years ago.
Really?
Yeah.
Name dropper.
but no, I mean it's annoying in as much as it completely misrepresents Catholic teaching. But it is funny, and the way they do a pastiche of sort of Oliver Twist, and they're doing the can-can, and you've got the dead body popping up, it's funny. And
it's a release as well, Jeff, it's a release, isn't it?
It is a release.
But it also tells you something. I mean, in the life of Brian, the statement, he's not the Messiah, just a naughty boy, actually allows you to have another insight into the nature and the person of Jesus.
Yeah,
it's just a naughty boy.
I mean, if we look at, for example, Moses, I found is, because Jewish people, Christians and Muslims, we all believe in Moses. And, for 40 years, he took the children of Israel and they wandered around the Sinai. Now, what kind of sat-nav? Just make you think, what kind of sat-nav did they have?
And it was a very old-fashioned tablet as well,
exactly.
Wasn't it?
So those things that... but just, I mean, and on a more sort of serious subject, I mean, on stage I've talked about, for example, the Muslim community. We have a thriving gay community, or as I like to call them, clerics. And, I found that people come up to me afterwards and said, you know what, some of our clerics are gay.
Cola, what, you laugh.
Well, he's hilarious.
Nikki, there's no more butter jokes than clergy. I mean, most people think we're Derek Nimmo's.
That's going back a bit, isn't it? Podrick?
You mentioned at the start, is there an attempt to kind of bring in kind of blasphemy? Of course, we only abolished the blasphemy law in this country a few years ago. But I was in Northern Ireland last week because there was a controversy flared up over a play by the Reduced Shakespeare Company about the abridged Bible. And some Free-Presbyterians in Antrim got very upset about this and nearly got the play banned. And what was really interesting in that debate was those two things. There was this idea of what they kept saying was, you wouldn't say this about the Quran. And what they really mean is, we want people to be as scared of our religion as people are of offending Muhammad. Perhaps.
Rather than being proud of the sort of post-enlightenment.
Yeah, exactly. But there's a real move now to kind of impose, what a lot of censorship about is saying, we own this, no one else can touch this. We are the only people who can interpret this. We are the only people who hold the truth. And if you try to look at it differently, look at it a different way, and make fun of it, then you must be stopped because you've offended my truth.
Who makes that decision?
Go on, yes.
I just like to say, I think it's important that religion is out there and talked about. And if you start to say, we can't talk about this, can't talk about that, you're wiping it from the debate table, really. And the comedy club is a debate table, and the pub is as well, where we tell jokes. And I'm doing a Leicester show tomorrow night, which will be a clean show, but it will be, I'll be talking a bit about religion and getting it out there, because I think it's interesting, like the Bible is the most shoplifted book in the world, which is often not talked about. Some people think the Bible should be taken, literally. And it's things that we need to, talk about these things. Why not get them out there and have them actually as part of the agenda on the table?
Yeah. Cole, very quickly, 20 seconds.
Yeah. Freedom of expression is such an important and vital right, and we have to recognise that the only limits that should exist on freedom of expression are, for instance, if there's an incitement to hatred or an incitement to violence. Nobody has a right not to be offended. And actually, I'd suggest that people should engage in those moments where they feel offence, because that's where real debate, engagement and discussion can happen.
Thank you all very much indeed. Paul, good luck. I'm sure you've sold a few tickets.
At least 5.
Jeff, likewise. I'm sure you've sold a few tickets. Lots of hits for your YouTube, Charlie, channel. As always, the debates will continue online on Twitter. Next week, we're in Edinburgh, my hometown. Join us then. For now, goodbye. Enjoy your Sunday.